Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Ask the Doctor. Tonight's a really important topic. It's infertility, the functional medicine approach. There's going to be a lot of people tuning in to find out all about this important topic. We're very blessed tonight to have an incredible mentor teaching us. He teaches, trains, lectures doctors all over the world, put in well over 10,000 hours teaching these people. An incredible family man and a great friend, the incredible Dr. Bob Rakowski.
Well, Carol, thank you always for the beautiful intro and for monitoring the chat and the introduction and the call and getting things started always. This infertility topic is a good topic and not such a good topic. It's really a sorry state of what's going on with our world. And one thing we're going to find out is that, the healthier we are, the greater the probability that we have of creating our own healthy life, a healthier world, and healthier children as well. So I've now been in clinical practice over 30 years, and I've seen all ends of the spectrum. I've treated world-class professional athletes from every major professional sport. I've seen a number of different Olympians. I've also seen people that were sent home to die that medicine gave up on. And the great news is some of these people are alive even decades later. And I have taught topics all over the world, all related to health and functional medicine. So, a number of questions were actually submitted this week, and I put little short answers on my Instagram, all less than a minute, because that's kind of how the algorithm works for Instagram. But literally, we're going to look and see, are there any signs and symptoms? What about the global decline in male births? What about the environment? Does that have anything to do with our infertility issue? And here's the short answer: yes, absolutely. We'll talk about nutrition and supplementation, exercise and stress management, things like in vitro fertilization. What is the ideal age to have a baby? That's an interesting question. We'll look at Ganoderma and also coffee and pregnancy. So when we start looking, the graphic on the left relates to the US. And notice in 1984, 5.4%. Fast forward to 2019, and suddenly 15.7%. That's about 1 in 6 couples having challenges with fertility. And it's not just the Western world, even though the West is a lot worse off for a lot of different reasons. We have terrible food, we have horrific toxins. People are drugged out of their minds, and often, they go into a system that just promotes drug, and that's a problem. But even globally, 10% of people, women especially, there are infertile. So when you start looking at the symptoms of infertility, the number one is you're just not able to get pregnant. But there may or may not be other challenges like abnormal periods, whether they're light or heavy or irregularly timed. Or even non-existence. And then certainly painful periods can be a sign of other things like endometriosis. And then there are things like polycystic ovarian syndrome and other challenges that can cause it. But quite simply, there's plenty of people that, have challenges with infertility, but otherwise don't really have any other symptoms. There was a documentary created a few decades ago called The Disappearing Male. And I find that this has been censored in some countries. Some countries you cannot access it. So you might want to YouTube that, The Disappearing Male, and see if you can find it. But the reality is there's less males in literally every single species. So this was Journal of the American Medical Association. And you look, going back here since 1970, they see an absolute steady decline in males born. But there's also a decline in testosterone and sperm count, and some trace this back to the 1950s. Within the disappearing male, they talk about a tribe in Canada called the Aamjiwnaang. And this was a very vibrant, healthy, amazing tribe, and their male birth rate was over 50%. Now, that has been statistically the case throughout human history, because if you look at it, boys are more likely to die young. They do stupid things, reckless things. They go off to war, which, hopefully we don't see too many more wars in the one that's going on. Hopefully that ends soon. But at any rate, boys tend to die earlier. So nature has a plan. They just make more men. But this tribe, once they built a series of petrochemical factories around them, the male birth rate dropped off dramatically from over 50% to ultimately about 30%. And definitely a challenge with that. When you start looking at male infertility around the world, it's an increasing number. So again, the West, 15% women is the challenge. 1 in 7 couples have challenges conceiving. Half the time they find out it's female related. 20% it's both, and 30% it's actually exclusively the male. We start looking at male sperm count, 1973, they have data on this. The average sperm count for a male was about 337 million. Drop that down 2011 down to 137 million. So that's a 59% reduction. So what's going on with men and what's going on with sperm? Well, this was an interesting article entitled Sperm Count Zero. And they showed a graphic that showed the proliferation of plastics. Now, keep in mind, plastics have estrogens in them. They call them xenoestrogens, foreign estrogens. And as plastics have increased, male sperm count has gone down. But also there's pesticides and other things that are associated with estrogen-related toxicity. And if you've seen other episodes of Ask the Doctor, I talk about the deadly quartet: stress, toxins, malnutrition, and physical inactivity. And each of these are also related to infertility. 2020, top cause of death on the planet, far and above malnutrition, and it's associated with infertility as well. So when we start looking at female nutrition, the medical literature really could be a lot more expansive than it is. So they figure out that a healthy diet, and they call out seafood, poultry, whole grains, fruits, and vegetables, better for both men and women in terms of fertility. But they also really want women to supplement with folic acid. And by the way, I'd specify the activated form of folic acid, the 5-methyl form of folate, and then omega-3s. And I'm a big fan of omega-3s and resolvins, and understand that baby's brain is made of omega-3s. And then antioxidants are good for men and sperm quality. Interestingly enough, soy can be a little bit controversial, but yet they find out when women are undergoing fertility treatments, soy is actually beneficial. So this study here was done, about 25 years ago, but here's what they did. They took a group of rats and they gave them a omega-3 deficient diet. And what they found out is that the mother's brain actually shrunk 21% in a single reproductive cycle. So if mom doesn't have enough omega-3, could that be a problem for her brain? Could that be a factor in postpartum depression? Now, in my mind, it absolutely is, although I'm not sure that medicine has yet proven that. But if you start chiseling away at mom's brain, it's probably not going to work as good nor feel as good. So my nutrition pyramid: really good foods, superfoods, top superfood on the planet, Ganoderma lucidum, also known as reishi, perfectly safe in pregnancy. Functional foods: a good multivitamin, multimineral, activated omega-3s, probiotic, D3, K2. And by the way, if someone wants to have a family, I recommend this for both mom and dad, because better nutrition certainly is associated with a greater probability of conception and healthy baby. So when we start looking at stress, here we can see that they're calling out different types of stressors. This here, fancy term, says the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Stress is perceived by the brain. The pituitary triggers a signaling molecule that signals the adrenals to actually release the stress response, both either acute or chronic. But here's what we know: when people are under stress, it has a very bad effect on fertility. And notice it says even fetal outcomes. So a very simple description of what I tell people is you're either making stress hormones or sex hormones, not both. And I'll show a graphic of that on a moment. Now, this reference actually suggests, and it's a 2022 reference, that there was evidence of decline in fertility going back to around 1900. So these bigger cities, more intoxication, industrial plants, things like that, they know that these toxic places release chemicals that are detrimental to human fertility. So what are the worst things that are out there? Well, they're calling out organochlorine compounds that could be pesticides. It could be bisphenol A, which is in plastics, other types of herbicides and pesticides. By the way, this term organophosphate, organophosphates were originally used in Nazi Germany on human experimentation. They basically used that in the gas chambers. And I can't believe that when they found the stockpile of these chemicals, they said, well, how are we going to get rid of these chemicals? And they realized they don't break down in the environment. So someone had the genius idea, well, why don't we just spray them on our food, in real low doses to try to kill off insecticides. Really bad insects, really bad idea. And now we're coming back to have challenges with even fertility. And by the way, heavy metals can be a challenge as well. This was an article that I pulled off the internet about 5 years ago, but it tells a tragic story and a very telling story. This was a whale that died and just was essentially, the carcass was beached in the UK. And when they did an autopsy and a biopsy and they looked at it, there were so many pollutants, so many intoxicants, so many estrogens in the fat that they believed that that was associated with the infertility of that particular whale, and likely could cause problems for the entire species. So how do these chemicals cause the problems? Well, they're called endocrine disruptors, hormone disruptors. They can literally disrupt the signal of hormones in a lot of different ways. They can block it, they can magnify it, but as a general rule, they're estrogen toxic. They can damage both the male and female reproductive system, and they can even kill the fetus. So we certainly want to keep our moms and dads as clean as absolutely possible. So when we start looking at how do we create a healthy baby, we start by living a healthy lifestyle. And this article calls out a number of things. So you want to have ideal nutrition, keep your weight under control. You want to exercise, you want to buffer stress, don't smoke, don't use drugs. They've actually found out in terms of conception, alcohol and caffeine, not that big a deal for preconception, but post-conception, definitely limit both. And we'll talk about the precise numbers for caffeine. Pregnant women shouldn't drink any alcohol. And certainly minimize toxin exposure. This busy graphic on the right shows a number of things that happen when moms become obese. But here's a simple fact. They're not going to be anywhere near as healthy. They're going to be a lot more inflamed. They're going to have a lot more stress hormones circulating in their system, a lot less probability of conceiving, and then a greater probability of an unhealthy baby. So, healthy moms, healthy babies is basically a global initiative. And by the way, obesity also has an extreme negative impact on male fertility. And so, especially if you just look that obesity is a chronic inflammatory process that can deplete nitric oxide and in and of itself can completely disrupt sexual function. So one of the questions about exercise is, should women who want to get pregnant exercise? And the answer is yes, but not too much. So there's something called the female athletic triad, and that is amenorrhea or loss of menstrual cycles, osteoporosis. And the third one that I didn't include in there is actually anorexia, because a lot of females that are part of sports are required to maintain a certain weight or have an ideal body composition. And often that leads to eating disorders. So you don't want to have calorie restriction, nor do you want to over exercise if you want to have a baby. The good side of exercise is pretty simple. One of the top causes of infertility in females is Polycystic Ovarian syndrome. That's what PCOS stands for. And that is related to suboptimal insulin function, even pre-diabetes or possibly even diabetes. And so when women exercise, they improve insulin signaling, and that in and of itself can be very helpful with PCOS and infertility. That's a little out of sequence in my presentation, but in terms of stress, you're either making stress hormones or sex hormones. So you want to keep your stress hormones at a low. And this is a graph that I pulled off of a lecture that a doctor gave, and I thought it was very, very telling. When you look, there are absolutely multiple mechanisms by which stress is going to reduce sex steroids, including at the level of the brain. So when the body is releasing stress hormones, this actually stands for gonadotropin releasing hormone, and stress is going to inhibit that, which means it'll inhibit luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. Those are both important for males and females. If you don't ovulate, kind of hard to get pregnant there. And by the way, follicle stimulating hormone in a male makes sperm. And if you're not getting that signal, you may have a suboptimal sperm count. When we start looking at in vitro fertilization, this is becoming very, very popular, literally all over the world. So, they actually have a way of stimulating the ovaries with different types of drugs. Then they're going to harvest the eggs. Then ultimately they're going to fertilize them and then implant them. And there are certainly some challenges. When you're actually going to fertilize an egg outside the body and put it in, there are certain genetic conditions that happen or could happen, a higher risk. So if we can do it natural, always better. But I certainly know a lot of couples that have had successful in vitro fertilization. So what's the cost of it? About $20,000 total out of pocket for one cycle and $7,000 for every cycle after that. So it can be a little expensive. Then when we start looking at long-term complications, most of the literature says not much, but I have seen women who have gained over 100 pounds that they weren't able to lose after the hormonal alterations of IVF. So even though they talk about the weight gain being temporary, for some, it can be a lot more problematic than for others. Then age, of course, is very, very important. So when you look at in vitro, less than 35, almost a 40% success rate, 44 and above, 1%. So probably if you're going to do in vitro, the time to do it would be before the age of 35. Now, when we start looking at the optimal age for pregnancy, it turns out that probably younger within reason is better. You want someone mature, you want them in control of their life, but this is a kind of a joke that I've been sharing with my kids that is pretty accurate. And the joke is this: mature adults do not make children, children make mature adults. And anybody that has children probably sees the absolute wisdom and truth in that. Are you ever ready for a baby? No, but if you are financially secure in a good rock solid relationship and other things like that, all the better. But less than 30, this is the percent normal eggs. And so less than 50% are considered normal, and that goes down with each passing year. And it's not just the female, it's also the male. So after 35, there's an increased risk of Down syndrome, trisomy 21, and other challenges. But notice that fathers after the age of 45, greater probability of children with schizophrenia by 47%, that's pretty significant, and increased probability of autism. So there's a window of time for both men and women that would be ideal. When we start talking about Ganoderma or reishi and infertility, Ganoderma is powerful at buffering stress. I love the stress reset. It's powerful for clearing toxins, including xenoestrogens and metalloestrogens. It has all the fabulous 50, all the vitamins, minerals, amino acids, proteins, carbohydrates, fat, fiber, and water in doses that make a difference to human health. It's perfectly safe for pregnancy, and it can give people more energy and less inflammation to actually move their bodies. And when you start looking at fat loss, and we've got a globese, that's a term, globesity. We have a globese world, obese world, and Ganoderma reishi is phenomenal for fat loss by multiple mechanisms. And it's also really good for insulin signaling. And in and of itself, we've seen it make diabetes go away, PCS go away, And yeah, we've had wonderful miracles of ladies conceiving when they were told that maybe they couldn't. So Ganoderm is a powerful regulator of nitric oxide. That's a good signaling molecule for the immune system, for the brain, for the cardiovascular system, and also for sexual function. An interesting stat, they now know that caffeine does not appear to cause any challenge with infertility. So people love their coffee. They can certainly enjoy it. If they have Ganoderm or reishi infused coffee, all the better, because that would certainly be healthier. By the way, the company Organo, I'm an investor in this company. Why? Because they have the best products in the world, period, end of story. Game changers in terms of reishi infused coffee and tea. But here's what they say. Hey, Ganoderm is perfectly safe for pregnancy, but always, always, always check with your doctor, which is a pretty good piece of advice. When you start looking at the European Union, and I almost don't even want to quote the World Health Organization anymore because they seem to have their challenges with credibility, but 200 to 300 milligrams of coffee is safe for nearly everybody. Now, if someone knows they have a problem with coffee, probably don't drink it. But also within the article, it says there's plenty of people that can drink way more, 5, 6, 7 cups of coffee a day. So find out how well you tolerate it. Ganoderma infused coffee, really, really good. I have 3 beautiful granddaughters, and my daughter-in-law and daughter consumed reishi infused, Ganoderma infused coffee all the way up to preconception, conception, delivery, and nursing. So very safe, very healthy, very effective. And Marta, one of my favorite stories. So she was told she'd never be able to have a baby, period, end of story. And, she always wanted one, but it just was never going to be part of the game. And she was on a very nice vacation with Balaz. They weren't married at the time. Here is their wedding. They were having a nice honeymoon type vacation. And guess what? They got back and she realized she was supposed to have a menstrual cycle and didn't have it. Didn't think it was possible to get pregnant, so didn't think much of it. And then another month comes by and still no cycle and feels like she's gaining weight, took a pregnancy test, and sure enough, an organo miracle baby. And by the way, she has another as well. So, doctors, I guess they advise for the best that they know, but miracles happen, and they happen more so when we make better choices. Ganoderma or reishi also very, very powerful at protecting the baby from some of the worst toxins in the history of humanity. So this is a mouse study. They wouldn't do this to humans, but they gave a known toxin that would damage the brain and spinal cord. And if they didn't give any Ganoderma to protect before the toxin, nearly 80% of the offspring were severely damaged. 1 dose of Ganoderma pre-dose dropped it down to 20%. So that ends the official part of the references. And let's find out if anybody has any questions.
Xavier asks, what do you recommend for someone who has ovarian cysts and diverticulitis?
So the cysts, a PCOS, is typically an insulin signaling problem, but it can also be related to what are known as xenoestrogens, foreign estrogens, estrogens and plastics, pesticides injected into animals. And a third factor is actually excess body fat or even obesity. So we want a diet which is friendly for insulin, super duper clean, and then nutrient supplementation to clear out the xenoestrogens. There's a functional medical food for that that helps the insulin signaling. Ganoderma lucidum is really good for that. When we start looking at diverticulitis, the inflammatory process of the bowel with outpouching of weakness, we're finding out that since the world has so much lower fiber in their diet, diverticulitis and diverticulosis is a lot more common than it previously was. So we want to have really good, clean diets. We want to have the right amount of fiber. And you know what? There's sometimes that when people have that issue, there's certain things they need to avoid, like things with small seeds, because if that gets caught in that little pouch, people can get an infection and that can be problematic. So a higher fiber diet, a keto fiber, good exercise, really eat right, drink right, think right, move right, sleep right, poop right, talk right. Ganoderma lucidum, as much as they can possibly take, helps with all 3.
Okay. What would you recommend for someone who wants to reduce stubborn belly fat and high insulin levels regarding the foods that you would eat or other activities?
So interestingly enough, there's a quote from the medical literature that's exactly this: regional fat distribution is under endocrine control. So we start thinking about it. Men tend to get it around the belly. Ladies tend to get it around the buttocks and thighs. And so the buttocks and thighs is an estrogen toxic circumstance, and the belly is a cortisol circumstance. And very, very often, I remember the first time I heard this was 30 years ago. I had this woman come in and see me, and she says, my entire life I had a really flat tummy. I had 5 kids, no tummy, and boom, here comes menopause. And now I got this tummy that I can't get rid of. Well, that's a cortisol release. Regional fat distribution is under endocrine control. So the stress reset would be potentially a really good idea. A ketogenic diet tends to be better for insulin. And then activity, move in a way that you want to move. So here's a plug I'm going to give to Eric and Heloisa Higgins. They have a website called Speed Health Online. And I think I'm at liberty to say that our beautiful friends Pete and Hannah Cohen are having a very significant challenge at the moment. And I don't know that Pete's given the details of that yet, but so Eric and Isa have created a 30-day online challenge for fitness. Now, keep in mind, his movie just came out, The Northman. He's a bona fide action hero. He's the real deal, an absolute beast. And he's Superman, she's Wonder Woman, and they're phenomenal with programs. And I believe they're priced, they're going to use the British unit, £50 for a month. I'm going to buy it. And then, by the way, there are organo prizes for participants and things that go. So I'm going to encourage everybody to participate and share it on your Facebook page or social media pages. Let's have the whole world doing this fitness challenge, because it's for an absolutely phenomenal cause. So consistent exercise, very, very powerful. Keto, Ganoderma spores, stress reset, all those things are good.
Perfect. Which OG products in particular would you recommend for vitality and increasing fertility for both men and women?
Well, again, I'm a big fan of consistency. So the one that they're going to do consistently is the best one for them. And people often notice the difference at 1 cup. But again, I'm a big fan of jump-starting the system with frequency, duration, intensity, quality, and timing of stimuli. You know what? And I have a clinic full of people that come in and they go, oh my gosh, that stress reset, it was rough for the first 3 days, but then I started feeling better, and I feel better than I have in 20 years. Many people say something like that. So, whatever they'll do consistently, but I like spores every waking hour.
Perfect. What do you recommend for people who want a simple detox?
Well, I don't know what the difference between simple and complex is, but very, very simply, stop putting toxins in is probably the easiest way. Your body's naturally going to detox. So clean out your pantry, clean out your kitchen, buy your willpower at the store. Don't intoxicate your body, mind, or spirit. Get all the junk, all the toxins out of your world. And just that in and of itself, when it comes to food, if God made it, it's okay. If man made it, stay away. That is what we would probably suggest. And I noticed a follow-up. What do you recommend for people who want to lose weight? The first question we have to answer is, what's causing the problem? And so on my YouTube channel, I've got several things on fat loss, but here's what we know. It's not as easy as calories in versus calories out. You just don't burn more than you take. It's not like our body, says, okay, you took in 100 calories, you need to burn 100 calories. If you take in the wrong 100 calories for you, it can inflame you. It can cause an insulin spike. If you have the wrong bugs in your gut, that 100 calories, believe it or not, could become 1,000 calories. Now, as ridiculous as that sounds, the difference in the bugs in our gut is profound. And I tell people the difference between good bugs and bad is what they eat and what they poop. Good bugs eat poop and poop nutrients. Bad bugs eat nutrients and poop toxins. There's something called the obese microbiome, and those bugs feed on fiber. So if you have an ideal ratio of bugs in your gut, you eat fiber, it adds bulk to your stool, you pass it out, you get no calories from the fiber. But if you have the wrong bugs that eat the fiber, you might absorb a couple thousand calories from something that'd be near 0 calories from someone else. So you want to figure out what's causing the problem and address it. diet, exercise, stress management are certainly the pinnacles of nearly every program.
How much tea and or spore capsules are recommended?
Depends on the case. If you have a healthy person and they just want a better choice, hey, just switch your coffee or tea. And on occasion, if you feel you need a little extra boost, take some of the capsules. But if you're dealing with something, it's some type of condition you want to change fast. Again, bodies respond to frequency, duration, intensity, quality, and timing of stimuli. I had a young man with 5 concussions, severe head pain, horribly depressed, couldn't think straight, couldn't get out of a dark room without his head hurting. Doctors weren't offering him any hope. He wanted to kill himself. We did a 21-day reset with spores every waking hour. And then I have a video of him, literally 100% better. So there's a private message. Someone was concerned about the negative effects about Ganoderma posted on Google. Could I expound on this? Sure. I mean, what is there not anything negative about on Google? I don't care what you type in. There's a ton of it. So if we go to PubMed.gov and type in Ganoderma, you're going to find 2,000 plus peer-reviewed studies proven against 15 different types of cancer, powerful immune modulator, no known toxicity, no known drug interaction. And so, literally, when you start looking at life and you say, what's a fast track to success in life? Using good references. What's the fast track to failure? Using bad references. And so Google in general, bad reference is the bottom line. I think we're going to see things change over time, but I don't even want to use the word censor, because who knows, maybe this video gets shut down, but I've been blocked and I think even shadow banned for sharing PubMeds that they didn't like. Now that's a Facebook thing. But at any rate, you want to use good references. That's really going to be the solution. Good information can lead to good choices. Bad information, bad choices. And what do you think is more dominant, just out of curiosity? Good information or bad information? So 5,000 plus years of human clinical use, one of the most coveted plants ever. And the reason they have 2,000 plus published studies is the drug companies keep saying, let's find something in that plant that we can create the next super drug from. And maybe they will, but why do you have to make a drug? It's all there. You want God's pharmacy or man's pharmacy? By the way, I'm okay with both, but predominantly God's pharmacy, right? Man's pharmacy in a crisis, lowest dose, shortest duration. God's pharmacy all day, every day, pretty much as you want. No downside to it. All right. Well, now I'm going to wrap up with 4 questions. I always like these 4 questions from James Allen's As Man Thinketh. First question is why? Why'd you take the time to join us tonight? There's so many things you could do. I'm not sure that anybody here is struggling with infertility, but guess what? You go outside, you're going to find somebody. You just have a handful of conversations, 1 in 7 couples. So maybe we can share some good information their way. By the way, second question is the answer to the first. Why not? Why not learn about something that is really good for so many people and a group of people that are committed to making the world better? Third question is why not you? Someone's going to be inspired to step up their game, to detoxify their pantry and their life, and help people move forward. And then the final question is why not now? The longer you wait to act on information, the least likely you are to act on it. So I'm going to encourage you all to take a step forward, whatever that best step is for you. I see some new names and faces and names as well. So welcome. And if you know anybody that can benefit, please share. So good night all, and God bless.